All right, here we go again. A plaster on my happy face so I can make it through one more episode of Everything is Going to Hell and It's the End of the World as we know it. My friends, it is a smoke-infested hellhole outside here in Western Canada. We got an orange haze in the sky. British Columbia is burning down. Extraordinary wildfire activity this year, unprecedented on a scale never before seen in North America. Nothing short of apocalyptic. Couldn't have seen it coming, could we? Unless you watch this channel for many years. Now, that's the least of our problems right now. British Columbia about to go up in smoke like a pack of cigarettes because just one day after NATO in their infinite wisdom decided to grant Ukraine F-16s and probably the mercenary pilots to fly them, Joe Biden decided to send 3,000 U.S. reserves to the eastern flank. That's what NATO calls it, the eastern flank. There's only one flank, and that's Russia. Okay, NATO only has one enemy, and it's Russia. Well, two if you count China, and soon to be, the NATO alliance is about to spread to New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. Anyways, these 3,000 reservists, of course, are going to be part of the 300 to 400,000 strong force that is going to be on a constant state of readiness there as a result of the coming World War. We also have Canada, who's going to be sending 1,200 troops to Latvia to keep them company. I'm telling you guys, the shizzy is hitting the fizzy. We got a lot of nuclear news to talk to you about today. We got the Wagners sending hints that World War III is coming, just weird, esoteric messaging. But let's just show you this diagram to put it in perspective, all right? This is the progression of events right now. This is called mission creep. It started off with small arms. Then before this war started, an acquaintance of mine started sending me messages saying, you know what? They're getting me to fly Stingers and Javelins in obscene amounts to Ukraine. I think a war is going to start. That's how we knew that the war was going to start. Then they started sending in HIMARS, then Patriots, then Bradleys, then Leopards, then Abrams, not in this specific order. The Abrams haven't got there yet. They're going to get there soon. Storm Shadow missiles, Scalp cruise missiles, depleted uranium, cluster munitions, F-16s, and a partridge in a pear tree. But what's next, you might add? What is next is the question. If you think it's going to end there, you're stupid. And you should just take up a new hobby. Is it going to be more advanced fighter craft? Is it going to be bombers even? Is it going to be long-range weapon systems? Is it going to be even longer-range weapon systems? Is it going to be warships? Is it going to be nuclear weapons? Some of those nice B-61 dial-a-yield nukes. All U.S. tactical nukes are dial-a-yield, so they can go from 0.3 kilotons all the way up to like 200 kilotons, possibly 300. I can't remember the exact number. So when they see those F-16s on the radar, understand what Lavrov said yesterday. He was abundantly clear in his messaging. When we see the F-16, we are not going to discern whether or not the sortie it's flying is a nuclear one, because we must interpret that the F-16s that are capable of deploying these B-61 bombs are carrying those nuclear weapons. Whether they are or not, our nuclear forces are going to be on a heightened state of readiness as a result of every F-16 sortie that gets flown. So we know that we got till autumn before things get very, very interesting. It's going to get interesting for a variety of other reasons because the strategic oil reserve is still being depleted. They're promising, oh, don't worry, we're going to buy 6 million barrels or something like that. Not even going to put a dent. That thing is going to sink like a stone if the shit hits the fan this autumn, and that means inflation is about to skyrocket. The US dollar is currently tanking. I got a bunch of charts that I got to show you guys today. Man, is there a lot going on. It's good that we have this timeline to prepare for, because come autumn, here's what's going to happen. According to Seymour Hersh, today he said that he believes that he has intelligence, and this is a man who has many resources and acquaintances and knows people in high places. He says that Russia is planning on doing their own counter to the counteroffensive, and that is going to start sometime in August. Is it going to happen that we are going to see F-16 enter the space sooner And piloting these F-16s are either going to be Ukrainians that have been training in secret for some time now, or mercenaries, retired NATO pilots wearing Ukrainian insignia. It's quite possible they got them running around the country as is. It's everybody knows that there's mercenaries there. There's American speakers there. There's people from the UK. They've been taken prisoner, yada, yada, yada. It's no secret. What's the difference? Whether they're holding a rifle or they're in a cockpit. There really isn't a difference, I don't think. So come August, September, October, these are going to be critical months for the possibility of a massive escalation of this conflict, because for the first time ever, F-16s are going to be going up against Russian missile defense systems. Now, it may have happened in some capacity in Syria, but I don't think so. It may have happened in some capacity in Iran, not in some actual engagement capacity, but in which F-16s or NATO jets came across their radars or within range. It may have happened in Iraq back during the Iraq War. I don't know if they had Soviet defense systems or not. Regardless, there's going to be a lot of firsts on the horizon. And the simple fact that Russia will interpret these F-16 missions as potentially nuclear ones, and thus triggering their nuclear forces to go on high alert, is very significant, because many people have already forgotten about the nuclear power plant stuff. That's still an issue, okay? That's still there. That's in the only place, as far as I can see, where the Russian defenses are null and void. As you can see by this map, I mean, you'd have to be suicidal to attempt anything in this direction. That's not going to stop them from doing it. But if you look at the map in here, this is where the nuclear power plant is. It's also where the least amount of defenses are. Now, as you can see, the water levels are quite low in that region, so they could foreseeably try to make a run at it across this region, even though there's still water there, and it's actually a much larger distance than you think. This is a long river, so that's about a few miles anyways, probably 10 miles at one of the larger gaps. But if the water level's low, maybe they're amassing pontoon bridges in secret somewhere. You just don't know what they're up to, okay? But either way, come autumn, you're going to see a Russian counteroffensive. Possibly F-16s are going to be delivered sooner than later. Look, they announced cluster munitions, and then they were literally there the next day bombing Russian positions, according to Medvedev. And now they're already openly there, so we know they're there. So if they're saying that they're going to do something, chances are it's already there, and they just haven't unveiled it yet. Because why would you there's no need to be strategic about it. There's no need at this point in time for NATO to telegraph what they're going to do and when they're going to send it. It would just be stupid to do that. So you would assume that what they're saying is always there's a lag of maybe a few weeks, if not a few months, in terms of what they're telling us. So they're already probably getting ready for the F-35s and the longer range missile systems, and for all we know, even the nuclear weapons. Because the shit that's going down today with nuclear power plants is crazy. Now get a load of this. 2 days ago, I talked about how there was a Storm Shadow missile intercepted, according to the Russians now, so take it with a grain of salt, that was bound for a nuclear power plant within Russia. I think it was actually 3 or 4 days ago now. But now today, video footage of new explosions in the city of Voronezh, probably pronouncing that wrong, which is in close proximity to a nuclear depot that was seized by Wagner in a coup recently. Now, there's mixed opinions about whether or not they were actually able to seize the facility, and even if they were able to seize it, were they able to acquire nuclear weapons is the question. And even if they were to acquire nuclear weapons, how would you conceal that? Because nuclear weapons aren't exactly small and easy to hide. And how would you detonate them? You need certain codes and trigger mechanisms and things that not the average, even a group like the Wagner, with all of their specialists, would not be able to deploy. So, but the question is here, what is going on with Storm Shadow missiles? It'd be one thing if Ukraine was sending drones in that direction. And that would be stupid unto itself, because the only result of that would be a massive Russian bombardment, which is always the case. Anytime Ukraine sends a drone to Moscow or makes an incursion into Russian territory, they bomb the shit out of Ukraine-held areas. And it never really does anything. The Ukrainians never stand to gain anything of a tactical or strategic benefit in doing this. Definitely not strategic, maybe small tactical gains. But so what would the motive be for doing something like this? Is somebody trying to start some shit? Why would they target nuclear power plants in Russia? Russia is not short on energy. In fact, they got abundance of energy in Russia. If there's anything that's cheap in Russia, it is energy. So there's no sense targeting the nuclear power plants unless you're trying to provoke a response. Now, the fact that they were using British Storm Shadow missiles, implicated in that would be some British specialist on the other end providing information, providing coordinates, targeting, assisting in some capacity in the firing of these missiles, you would presume. So, very suspicious. And now today, with this attack, we don't know if it was a drone or if it was a missile or what, close to a nuclear depot. So it's one thing to target nuclear triad that they did last year. It's another thing to target a nuclear power plant. Now they're targeting these nuclear depots where nuclear weapons are stored. You see the escalation there. Why on earth would you do that? Unless there's something we don't know, and unless there is some internal crossover dispute somewhere between, like some civil dispute, some warring factions possibly that we're still not hearing about, that's being kept under the radar by both sides. And maybe this is not such a clear-cut dialectic between Ukraine and Russia as we're told. And there's numerous interests in warring factions that some of these missile attacks could be being waged by. So that just is one more point of escalation. We have Dimitrium Evidence saying that this is when, a couple days ago, when Tokmak was shelled with cluster munitions. This means that it's time to unleash our arsenals of inhumane weapons. And the Russians have all kinds of cluster munitions, dozens of different types of cluster munitions. And so all those scenes that you've seen in Vietnam, you're probably going to see that once again. Now, I want to show you a video here because this is very important. This is quite telling. This is a Wagner commander, okay? Now, a few months ago, Evgeny Prigozhin was talking about, you can't read it on the screen here, but he was talking about how the Third World War is coming, and if you join with us now, you'll be given a better seat at the table than if we have to draft you. He's always been talking about the world war that is coming. Now, one of his commanders gave this very cryptic message today. And I'm going to read it. I might have to slow it down a bit for you guys. It's all subtitles anyways, but I'll read it for you. He says, "Good day, everyone. I'm Field Commander of the PMC Wagner, call sign Berserk. We are located in the brotherly Belarus." So they're in Belarus. We have confirmation from Wagner that they're in Belarus. On behalf of the Field Commanders Council, I'd like to tell everyone who lost their spirit that this is all just the beginning. Our march for justice showed a lot of interesting things. Without saying directly, I'll only mention. Now understand, this guy is in Russian vassal state, Belarus, saying this. A lot of people are interpreting this as meaning a sign of some Russian civil unrest. I'll just let him finish, but don't take it so literally. Here's what he says. That certain units of the MOD that were allegedly stuck in traffic did arrive in the end to Rostov. So Rostov was that area that the Wagner had basically commandeered. They took over the military headquarters there, and the Chechens were en route outside of Rostov, ready to engage Wagner. Now he's saying that there were military units of the Ministry of Defense that allegedly did arrive, and they had some sort of negotiation, apparently, so he says. And then he goes on to say, In the first minutes, their commander, a very decent officer, found dialogue with our Ratibor. I'm not sure what that means. We arrived at very interesting conclusions which eliminate some of our previous arguments. Okay? Thus you should know that there are like-minded people among your loyal footmen. Together we are strong. So I'm happy to please many of our supporters. Friends, it's all just the beginning. PMC Wagner and its path is far from over. We're ready for global events and turmoils. We're ready for global events and turmoils that the country and we are waiting for. Thanks to all who supported us and for being with us. Now, a lot of people are interpreting this as the theatric of Wagner is about to try to take over the Russian government again. But I think what he's hinting at here is the two factions that are fighting within the Russian government are the Hawks and the Doves. The Doves are Team Putin, who want to go soft and prosecute this war softly. But there's also appears to be this other faction who wants to start some shit, who wants to utilize nuclear weapons, or who wants to go full on, declare war, maybe not declare it, but wage total war against Ukraine. I think that's what he's hinting at. What is he saying, guys? What is your interpretation? You can go watch this video on Twitter. I'll give you the name of the poster here. It is Dimitri. I believe this guy is typically a very pro-Ukraine account. And Dmitri. And what is your interpretation of this? We're ready for global events and turmoils, and that our path is far from over. The country we in the country are waiting for. Something is strange about those statements. Okay? They are preparing for something big. We keep hearing this from people in the Wagner organization who typically are quite ostentatious and not at all tight-lipped about the plans, unless that's all just for show, but they tend to blab a lot. Are they telling us what's coming? I mean, we can see with our own eyes, with the mission creep, with the sending of troops today, just one day after the commitment of F-16s, that something is about to happen. That's something, I think we all know what it is, that war is coming to NATO. Now, Poland is apparently building express routes towards the Suwalki Gap. Okay, now the Suwalki Gap is what is the area in between. Let me see if I can find a better map to show you this. The Suwalki Gap is the area in between, Belarus and Kaliningrad. Okay, so this is a good map. So this is Belarus right here, this country, and this is the Suwalki Gap, okay? So this is where goods transit or have transited historically, now it's quite restricted, to Kaliningrad, this exclave of Russia. So here you have Poland and Lithuania, okay? So goods to get to Kaliningrad now either have to go through the the Baltic Sea, which is totally controlled by NATO pretty much, from St. Petersburg all the way down to Kaliningrad, it's NATO countries. Or it has to fly in there over NATO airspace, or it has to transit this Suwalki Gap. Now, apparently, what Poland is planning on doing, they already have HIMARS set up here, I believe, but they're planning on building another corridor that's going to go into this region in such case that there's a military emergency. Okay, so you have additionally Lithuania's call for NATO to deploy permanent military force near the Russian border. Apparently, this is in violation of a past agreement between Russia and NATO, even though there's pretty much no agreements anymore at all. I mean, all the diplomats are being expelled. There's no more nuclear treaties. It's basically Mad Max out here just waiting to pop off. You have Canada doubling its military force in Latvia. And in the run-up to this NATO expansion, we're going to hear all kinds of stories week after week of more troops heading to Europe. So prepare for it. Don't be shocked by it. Just know that this is what they're planning on doing. They're planning on ultimately staging around 500,000 troops on the flank, as they call it. 100,000 will be ready to deploy to Poland at a moment's notice, so they say. So either way you slice it, not looking good. This I found was an interesting post. And they're making the comparison, why can't they accept Ukraine into NATO when they accepted, you know how they have all these parameters, you gotta fulfill all these criteria, you can't be at war, you have to have a democratic economy, blah, blah, blah. Well, this sarcastic post is comparing the integration of Germany. And he says, it was good that your country was accepted into NATO when you had no borders clearly defined, with no peace treaty, with a fresh genocide you organized, and with a bunch of real NAZIs within your army. You were totally NATO compatible, not like Ukraine now. Now, we all know why it's not tactically useful for NATO to integrate Ukraine now. And as I've talked about, don't be deceived. Ukraine is NATO, effectively. The only thing propping Ukraine up is NATO. In fact, I would argue that NATO needs Ukraine more than Ukraine needs NATO. And I'm having some back and forth with somebody who I'm assuming is a subscriber via email, and we're talking about this and trying to debate whether or not, who is more dependent on who. Because Ukraine and all of their commanders who have all of this incredible military experience on the front in high-intensity, modern, 21st century combined arms warfare that no other NATO country has. And I've talked about the Machiavellian ploy that NATO is playing here in order to keep Ukraine at a manageable level of weakness. Because what would happen if Ukraine just decided to turn around and go in the other direction and join Russia? I mean, it's not, anything can happen in these conflicts. If you look at the maps of World War II, there were regions that were switching sides all the time. So you just never know what the powers that be have in mind. Maybe they're trying to keep Ukraine at a manageable level of weakness. It's quite possible. Maybe Zelensky is trying to maintain some level of control, but I never really, all those memes bashing Zelensky. I never bash Zelensky because you can't possibly believe that he's the one who is really calling the shots. I mean, this is a guy who was an actor, who was groomed, who was acting in a position where he was acting as a president before he actually became president. So, anyways, clown world, as they say. Now, strategic petroleum reserve will not be replenished anytime soon. They wanted to replenish it at $62 to $72 a barrel. Oil is now going up once again because the US dollar is tanking. I believe the US dollar and the USD index is down below 100 now. It's at 99.77. So everybody's cheering that the stock market is going up, but all that's happened is that the dollar has went down correspondingly. So it really means nothing. These prices of gold going up and Bitcoin going up and all this stuff, it means nothing because by and large, the dollar has went down. So you need more dollars to account for the value of a thing. But U.S. strategic petroleum reserve stocks still plummeting at near record lows, at least since the 80s. And it's not looking good because we're using a lot more oil than we did in the 80s. That's for sure. And the good old Schiller PE ratio constantly reminds us of how overvalued the markets are. This, recall, was Black Tuesday before the Great Depression in 1929. Okay, when the stock market crashed, that's where the bubble was. That is just the new normal now since the quantitative easing era. This is why oftentimes they'll disregard the first 50 years of the PE ratio and they'll talk about post-1980 PE ratios average, which is much higher. But the actual average for the PE ratio is somewhere in the neighborhood of 14, 15, and we are currently at 31. Okay, we are higher than it was before the Great Depression, which means that things are going to start crashing soon. Whether it is housing, which is definitely going to crash here. I mean, it's impossible to live in a big city in Canada. And it's only a matter of time before the immigrants who come here start acting out in ways like they are in France, not only as a result of the increased austerity and the increased militarization of police, just the inability, I should say, to feed yourself. I mean, you cannot afford a house in Toronto, like a run-of-the-mill middle-class home, unless you make $250,000 a year. You can't afford a mortgage. It's just too expensive. So the bubble's about to burst across the board. There's no doubt about that. It's a great time to continue to invest in precious metals and just keep a good diversified portfolio, I do believe. Now, some more Clown World stuff for you guys. I mean, this is... You got to ask yourself, like, you know, you look at the barcode and the www dot and the XXX and all of the Pythagorean numerology and all that stuff. You guys know I'm not a tinfoil guy. I'm an empiricist. But sometimes I look at these things and I'm like, are they trying to be provocative here? This is the new Meta symbol, okay? The symbol for the new Twitter competitor. And people have discovered that there's all these sixes in there. There's actually 3 sixes, 666, just like the Walt Disney symbol. Like, what is the obsession here? You know, what is the obsession with the 666 number? It's just weird to me. Now they're going to play it down, and you got all these articles written by the usual suspects saying, it's just these conspiracy theorists, blah, blah, blah. That NATO symbol doesn't look like a swastika when you turn your head a little bit. You're on drugs. You're crazy. You know what? Elon Musk quoted this. He said, I didn't quote, but he said, "You are free to be your true self here." And it got me thinking for a second. Everybody's praising Elon Musk, you know, the guy who's bringing in the self-driving cars that have all kinds of cameras that monitor everything you do. I know I own one of them. They're incredible machines. Absolutely incredible. Do not knock a Tesla until you drive one. It's like driving a frickin' rocket ship. It can, the Tesla I have can beat a Lambo at least for the first 100 meters or whatever it is. At the first quarter mile, I beat the Lambo, okay? But beyond that, it's an Orwellian nightmare. So here's what I responded to Elon with. I don't think I got any views, much less likes. But I asked him, didn't Mao encourage people to be their true selves? And this is true. This is 100% verifiable fact. You can go and check it out. That during the 100 Flowers campaign, they asked people, you know, be yourselves. Tell us what your sexual orientation is. Tell us what your political beliefs are. Whether you don't like the government, you are free to say whatever you want. Only to crack down on that same dissent 2 years later violently. Citizens were rounded up in waves by the hundreds of thousands, publicly criticized, condemned to prison camps, or sentenced to their deaths. Something to think about. I'm not saying that Elon Musk ain't on our side. I'm just saying be careful who you idolize. Just be careful. Be very, very careful, because yeah, especially have to watch out for these objectivists. You know, Elon Musk, he's a visionary, but the thing you have to worry about with people like that is if they have, and I'm not religious, I'm agnostic, but if they have no moral or ethical grounding, there's nothing to stop them from viewing you through the objectivist lens that says that you're just organic matter that is a means to an end. Is that end traversing the cosmos? Do we gotta take out 1 billion people here in order to get to Jupiter? I don't know. Anyways, let's bring it back down to Earth. I want to ask you guys a question. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this thing. Yeah, we're gonna end the video with me pointing a gun at you. This is the Umar X double barrel javelin airbow. Okay, now tell me what you would choose. Would you choose that, or would you choose the twin strike crossbow, recurve crossbow? It shoots 2 arrows. Okay, so you get the double crossbow, or you get the Umar X airbow This is 450 feet per second. It requires a special air compressor, 4,000 pounds per square inch. Okay, this thing is very powerful, 130 foot-pounds of energy, and you can shoot 25 shots before you have to refill the tank, but you need the special air compressor. They're both comparably priced. So this one's around $1,500 if you, actually around $1,600 if you factor in the special air compressor that you need for it. And this one's around the same. It's around 2,000 bucks, okay? So tell me, what do you think is better? I'm leaning towards the Crossbow because of the durability factor. I can make a crossbow string with paracord. I can make crossbow strings with fishing line. Especially if it's recurve. Don't get a compound, get a recurve. You want something that's gonna last. Excalibur makes very high quality stuff. This stuff is built to fall out of a tree stand. So it's built very tough. I think in the long run, the Crossbow, while it is more unwieldy and it's bigger and it's clunkier and it's way heavier, that is gonna last longer. Now, there's not a whole lot of moving parts in here. There's an air tank. The moving parts are offloaded to the air compressor, okay? So the air compressor could break down, but you get 25 shots compared to having to recock this thing after 2 shots. All you have to do with this is stick another arrow in the end. So faster reloading, lighter weight, much easier to shoot, probably a little bit more accurate than the Crossbow because it's about 100 feet more per second in terms of shot power. And yeah, you get pick rails on there as well, so you can add a bunch of accessories. I don't know, man. I just thought I would get your guys' opinion on that. If you had to choose one, what would it be? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to pick one of those up, check out CanadianPreparedness.com. The benefits of both: reusable ammo, it's quiet, and you can take down any large game. Moose is probably the largest you're ever going to go here. Maybe if things get really desperate, people will be eating grizzly bears and polar bears, but it's going to get real bad before it gets that bad, I'm sure. But the way things are going with the forest burning down, we might have the bears coming through our windows pretty soon before the people. Anyways, guys, you guys take care. I'm going to go enjoy the smoke-infested air, and just stay ready, man, because things are getting interesting out there. Take care. Canadian Prepper out.